David couldn't sleep. It was 3 in the morning, and he just lay there staring at the ceiling. His girlfriend Lisa was beside him, and he could feel her staring at him in the darkness. They'd been together for 6 months now, and something felt different tonight. Something in the air felt heavy, like before a big storm. "David," she whispered, "I need to tell you something." He turned to look at her. The moonlight coming through their bedroom window made her face look strange somehow, almost like she was glowing a little bit. He blinked, thinking his eyes were playing tricks on him. "What's wrong?" he asked, his heart starting to beat faster. Lisa sat up slowly. The way she moved seemed too smooth, too graceful, like a dancer or something. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. He could see her hands shaking. "I've been keeping a secret from you," she said quietly. "A big one. And I can't do it anymore. Not if we're going to keep moving forward together." David sat up too, suddenly wide awake. His mind raced with possibilities. Was she married? Did she have kids she never told him about? Was she sick? 1,000 thoughts crashed through his brain all at once. "Okay," he said carefully. "You can tell me anything." She looked at him with those beautiful green eyes he'd fallen in love with. But now they seemed different somehow. Deeper. Older. Like they'd seen things he couldn't imagine. "I'm not human," she said. David waited for her to laugh, to say she was joking, but she just kept staring at him with that serious expression. He let out a nervous laugh. "Come on, Lisa. It's 3 in the morning. What are you really trying to tell me?" "I'm serious," she said. Her voice didn't waver at all. "I'm not like you. I'm something else. Something that's been around a lot longer than you'd believe." He rubbed his face with his hands. Maybe he was dreaming. Maybe he'd fallen asleep and this was just some weird nightmare. He pinched his arm. "Nope. Definitely awake. Lisa, you're scaring me a little bit here." She reached over and turned on the small lamp on the nightstand. In the soft light, he could see tears running down her face. She'd never looked more human to him than in that moment. "I know how this sounds," she said. "Believe me, I know. I've lived a long time, and I've never told anyone what I'm about to tell you. But I love you, and you deserve to know the truth before we go any further." David's throat felt tight. "How long have you lived?" "Oh, 217 years, she said simply. He stared at her. She didn't look a day over 28. This was crazy. This was absolutely insane. But something in her eyes told him she believed every word she was saying. "That's not possible," he whispered. "I know it's not. But it's true." She stood up and walked to their dresser. She pulled out a small wooden box he'd never seen before. Inside were old photographs. Really old. Black and white pictures from what looked like the 1,950 seconds. And there she was, in one of them, looking exactly the same as she did right now. David took the photo with trembling hands. "This could be your grandmother. Or something." "It's me," Lisa said. "And I have pictures going back even further if you need to see them." He set the photo down on the bed. His hands were shaking now too. "What are you then? A vampire?" She almost smiled. "No, nothing like that. I'm what's called a Nephilim. We're descendants of very old beings. We look human. We live among humans. But we're different. We age much slower. We're stronger. We heal faster. And we have certain abilities that regular people don't have." "Abilities," David repeated. He felt like his brain was shutting down, unable to process what he was hearing. Lisa walked over to their small houseplant that had been dying for weeks. Nothing they did seemed to help it. She placed her hand over it gently. David watched as the brown leaves slowly turned green again. New shoots began growing right before his eyes. In 30 seconds, the plant looked healthier than it had in months. "That's impossible," he said again, but his voice was weak. I wish it was, she said sadly. I really do. Because being what I am has cost me everything I've ever loved, everyone I've ever cared about. David stood up and backed away from her. His mind was screaming at him that this couldn't be real, but his eyes had just seen a dead plant come back to life. His hands had held a photograph that didn't make sense. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Lisa's face crumbled. More tears fell. Because you've been talking about marriage, about our future, about growing old together, and I can't let you make that commitment without knowing what you'd be signing up for. In 40 years, you'll be old, and I'll still be young, and eventually, I'll have to watch you die, just like everyone else I've ever loved. The weight of her words hit him hard. She wasn't just telling him she was different. She was telling him that loving her came with an expiration date. His expiration date. Have you loved before? He asked quietly. She nodded. 3 times. Real love, I mean. The kind that makes you want to tell the truth about yourself. Each time ended in pain. The last person I loved died 50 years ago. I swore I'd never let anyone get that close again. But then I met you, and I couldn't help myself. David sat back down on the bed. His whole world was turning upside down. Yesterday, his biggest worry was whether his boss would approve his vacation days. Now he was learning that supernatural beings were real, and he'd been dating one. Show me something else, he said. Something that proves this is real, and I'm not losing my mind. Lisa closed her eyes. When she opened them again, they were glowing silver. Pure silver. Like liquid metal. It only lasted a second. But it was enough. David gasped. I can do other things too, she said, her eyes back to normal. But I don't want to scare you more than I already have. He laughed, but it sounded half crazy even to his own ears. Too late for that. They sat in silence for a moment. David's mind was racing. Part of him wanted to run out the door and never look back. But another part of him, the part that loved this woman, was still here, still trying to understand. Is there anything else I should know? He asked. Any other surprises? Lisa's face went pale. She walked to the window and looked out at the street below. Her whole body went rigid. Yes, she whispered. There's one more thing. There are people who hunt beings like me. Organizations that have existed for centuries. They capture us, study us, or worse. I've been running from them my whole life, moving every few decades, never staying in one place too long. And? David asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Lisa pointed out the window. And that black SUV that just parked across the street wasn't there when we went to bed. I can sense them. They've found me. David's blood ran cold. He walked to the window and looked down. Sure enough, there was a dark vehicle sitting there with its lights off. As he watched, he saw someone inside move. What do we do? He asked. Lisa turned to him with fear in her eyes. Fear he'd never seen there before. She said, right now, we take what we can carry and we run. If they catch me, they'll take me. And if they know about you, they might come for you too. David looked around their small apartment. Their home, their life together, everything they'd built over 6 months. And he had to make a choice, right here, right now. Believe her and run, or think she was crazy and stay. He looked into her eyes one more time. Those ancient eyes that had seen centuries pass by. And he knew, somehow, deep in his gut, that every word she'd said was true. Let's go, he said. They had 5 minutes to change the David had never packed so fast in his life. His hands were shaking as he threw clothes into a backpack. Lisa moved through the apartment like lightning, grabbing things he would never have thought of. Cash from a hidden spot in the closet. A first aid kit. bottles of water, 2 burner phones still in their packages. "How long have you been preparing for this?" he asked, watching her pull out a small bag from under the bathroom sink that had fake IDs and passports inside. "Always," she said simply. "When you've lived as long as I have, you learn to have an exit strategy everywhere you go." That stung a little. Their whole relationship, she'd been ready to disappear at any moment. But he pushed the feeling aside. There'd be time to process his emotions later. Right now, they needed to survive. "Are they dangerous?" David asked, zipping up his bag. Lisa stopped and looked at him. "Very. They call themselves the Covenant. They've been around almost as long as my kind have. They believe beings like me are threats to humanity. Some of them want to study us. Others just want us gone. Gone as in dead," she finished. "Yes, some of them think we're demons or monsters. They don't see us as people at all." David's stomach turned. He peeked out the window again. The SUV was still there. "How do we get past them?" "The fire escape," Lisa said. "It leads to the alley behind the building. My car is parked 2 blocks away in a garage. I always keep it somewhere separate, just in case." Of course she did. David was starting to realize how much of Lisa's life had been about hiding and running. How lonely that must have been. They slipped out of the apartment and into the hallway. Everything was quiet. Most of their neighbors were asleep. David felt guilty that he wouldn't be able to say goodbye to anyone. His job, his friends, his family would all wake up tomorrow, and he'd just be gone. "I'm sorry," Lisa whispered, as they climbed down the fire escape. "I'm so sorry I dragged you into this." "You didn't drag me," David said, even though his heart was pounding so hard he thought it might explode. "I'm choosing this." They hit the alley and ran. Lisa moved faster than any person should be able to, but she slowed down to keep pace with him. Behind them, David heard car doors slam, shouting. They'd been spotted. "Run faster," Lisa urged. They cut through yards and between buildings. David's lungs burned. He'd never been much of an athlete, and it was showing now. Lisa could have easily left him behind, disappeared into the night, and been safe. But she stayed with him, practically pulling him along. They made it to the parking garage. Lisa's car was an old sedan, nothing fancy. She tossed him the keys. "You drive. I need to watch behind us." David's hands shook as he started the engine. He'd never been in a car chase before. This kind of thing only happened in movies. But as he pulled out onto the street, he saw headlights behind them. The black SUV. "Go," Lisa said. David pressed the gas pedal down. The streets were nearly empty at this hour, which was good and bad. Good because they could go faster. Bad because they were easier to follow. "Turn left here," Lisa directed. "Then right at the next light. We need to get out of the city." "Where are we going?" "I have a place," she said. "Somewhere I set up years ago for exactly this situation. See, and a visitor." David wanted to ask more questions, but he was too focused on driving. The SUV stayed behind them, matching every turn. Whoever was driving knew what they were doing. After 20 minutes of heart-pounding pursuit through empty streets, Lisa suddenly said, "Pull into that parking lot. The one for the closed restaurant." "What?" "They'll catch us." "Trust me," she said firmly. David pulled in and killed the lights. Lisa jumped out of the car and ran to a dumpster at the edge of the lot. She did something he couldn't quite see, and suddenly there was a loud explosion from 3 blocks away. Not huge, but enough to echo through the quiet night. The SUV immediately changed direction, heading toward the sound. Lisa ran back and got in the car. "Go. Different direction. Now." "What was that?" "Fireworks," she said. "I keep stashes of supplies all over the city. That was one of them. It'll buy us maybe 10 minutes before they realize it was a distraction." David drove in silence for a while, his mind reeling. This woman had literally hidden emergency supplies throughout the entire city. She'd been living like a spy this whole time, and he'd never noticed. They drove for another hour, getting farther from the city. Finally, Lisa directed him to what looked like an abandoned warehouse on the edge of an industrial area. It was the kind of place people avoided. "This is your safe place?" David asked, parking the car inside through a broken loading door. "Looks can be deceiving," Lisa said. Inside, she led him through the dusty main floor to a back corner. She moved aside what looked like an old metal shelf, revealing a hidden door. Behind it was a staircase going down. The room below was completely different from the wreck above. It was small but clean. There was a bed, a small kitchen area, shelves stocked with food and water, and even a bathroom. On one wall were monitors showing camera feeds of the area outside. "I've had this place for 8 years, Lisa explained. "I've got 3 others, like it scattered around the region. Always good to have options." David sat down on the bed, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was wearing off, and reality was crashing down on him. "This is insane," he said. 12 hours ago, I was worried about a presentation at work. Now, I'm hiding in a secret bunker from people who want to capture my girlfriend, who's apparently 200 years old." Lisa sat beside him. "I know. And you can still leave. I can give you one of the fake IDs. Money. You can go back to your normal life and forget any of this happened." David looked at her. Really looked at her. "Did you mean it? When you said you loved me?" "Every word," she said, tears forming in her eyes again. "You're the first person in 50 years who made me want to stop running, who made me want to try again, even though I knew it would probably end in pain." "How did the others end?" he asked quietly. "The people you loved before." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. "The first one was in 1843. He was a farmer. Good man. Kind. We had 7 years together before illness took him. Back then, people died young. I held his hand as he passed, and part of me died too." She wiped her eyes. "The second was in 1920. A soldier who came back from war. We had 12 years. He was killed in an accident. Random. Meaningless. I wasn't even there. And the third," her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "His name was Thomas. We met in 1962. He was different because he knew what I was from the start. Another Nephilim told him about me. He didn't care. He loved me anyway. We had 13 beautiful years together." "What happened to him?" "The covenant happened," Lisa said bitterly. "They found us in 1975. We tried to run, just like tonight. But Thomas stayed behind to buy me time. He fought them so I could escape. They killed him." She was crying now, really crying. "I wanted to go back for him, to fight, to die beside him. But he made me promise I'd run, that I'd survive. So I did. And I've hated myself for it every day since." David put his arm around her. She leaned into him, and they sat like that for a while. 2 people from completely different worlds, holding on to each other in a hidden room beneath a forgotten warehouse. "I don't want to be another person you lose," David finally said. "Then we need to be smart," Lisa said, pulling herself together. "The Covenant won't stop looking. They never do. But I've evaded them before. I can do it again." David corrected. "We can do it again." Lisa looked at him with something like wonder. "You're really staying? Even after everything I just told you?" David thought about it. Really thought about it. His old life was comfortable, safe, boring. Honestly, this was terrifying and dangerous and completely insane. But it was also the most alive he'd ever felt. And he wasn't ready to give up on the woman sitting beside him. "I'm staying," he said. They tried to get some sleep, but both of them kept waking up at every small sound. Around dawn, Lisa's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her face went white. "What is it?" David asked. "A message," she said. From someone I haven't heard from in 30 years. Who? Oh, my brother, Lisa whispered. And if he's breaking silence to contact me, something very bad is happening. She showed David the screen. The message was short. They know about the human. Coming to you. Don't trust anyone. David felt ice in his veins. They know about me? Before Lisa could answer, there was a sound from above. Footsteps. Multiple people walking around in the warehouse. They found us, Lisa said, standing up. I don't know how, but they found us. David stood too, looking around the small room. Is there another way out? Yes. But, David, listen to me. She grabbed his face in her hands. Whatever happens next, know that everything I felt for you was real. Every moment. Every word. All of it. Every moment. Don't talk like that, he said. We're getting out of this together. The footsteps above got closer to the hidden door. Lisa pulled David toward a vent in the corner. This leads to a tunnel. It comes out 3 buildings away. Take it and run. I'm not leaving you. You have to, she said. Because they're not just after me anymore. My brother's message was clear. They know about you, and they'll use you to get to me. The hidden door above started to open. Someone had found it. David's heart felt like it was being ripped in two. But Lisa pushed him toward the vent. Run, she said, and trust that I'll find you. I always find a way to survive. David wanted to argue. To fight. To do something other than run away. But the fear in Lisa's eyes told him that the best thing he could do for both of them right now was to get to safety. He climbed into the vent just as the door above burst open. The last thing he saw before crawling away was Lisa, standing alone, facing whatever was coming for her. And for the first time since this whole crazy night began, David wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life by not staying to fight beside her. David crawled through the ventilation tunnel in complete darkness. His elbows and knees scraped against the metal. Behind him, he could hear muffled shouting. Lisa was buying him time, and every second he wasted meant she was in more danger. The tunnel seemed to go on forever. Finally, he saw light ahead. David pushed through a grate and tumbled out into what looked like the basement of another abandoned building. He was covered in dust and his hands were bleeding from the rough metal, but he was out. He stood there, breathing hard, trying to figure out what to do next. Lisa had told him to run, but run where? He didn't know anything about this world she lived in. He didn't know who to trust or where to go. Then he heard a voice behind him. You must be the human. David spun around. Standing in the shadows was a man who looked to be in his 30s. Tall, dark hair, and eyes that same impossible silver color Lisa's had turned. Who are you? David asked, backing away. Someone who's trying to keep you alive, the man said, stepping into the dim light. My name is Jonathan. I'm Lisa's brother. I sent her that message. How did you find me? I've been watching the warehouse for 2 days, Jonathan said. I knew the Covenant was closing in. I was hoping to get to you both before they did, but they moved faster than I expected. Lisa, David said urgently. They have her. We need to go back. We can't, Jonathan said firmly. Not yet. That's exactly what they'd expect. They'll be watching for any rescue attempt. So, we just leave her there? David's voice cracked. Jonathan's jaw tightened. My sister has survived worse than this. Right now, my job is to keep you safe. That's what she'd want. David wanted to argue, but he was out of his depth here. He didn't know anything about fighting or escaping or whatever skills were needed in this situation. Fine. But then, what? First, we need to get you somewhere truly safe, Jonathan said. Somewhere the Covenant can't reach. Come with me. They left through a side exit and got into a car parked in an alley. Jonathan drove in silence for a while, constantly checking the mirrors. David noticed he drove like Lisa did, always aware, always watching. "How long have you known about Lisa and me?" David asked. "About 4 months," Jonathan said. "I keep tabs on my sister, even though we don't talk often. When I saw she was getting close to someone, I got worried. Our kind. We're not meant to mix with humans. It always ends badly." "So I've heard," David said bitterly. They drove to the old downtown area, where big buildings stood that nobody used anymore. Jonathan parked in an underground garage and led David to a service elevator. But instead of going up, they went down, far down. The elevator opened into a space that made David's eyes go wide. It looked like an entire underground neighborhood. There were apartments, shops, even what looked like a small park with trees growing under artificial lights. And the people walking around, they weren't normal. He could see it in the way they moved, the way their eyes caught the light. "Welcome to the sanctuary," Jonathan said. "One of the last safe places for beings like us." "How many of you are there?" David whispered. "Here? About 200. Worldwide? Maybe 10,000. We used to be more, but the Covenant has been hunting us for centuries. We've learned to hide." As they walked through the underground community, David saw things that shouldn't have been possible. A woman whose skin seemed to shimmer like water. A child whose laughter sounded like musical notes. An old man who cast 2 shadows instead of 1. "Not everyone here is Nephilim," Jonathan explained. "There are different kinds of beings. Some are born different. Others were changed by things humans don't understand yet. But we all share one thing. We're not fully human, and the world above isn't safe for us." He led David to a small apartment. "You'll stay here for now. There's food in the kitchen. You should rest." "I can't rest," David said. "Not while Lisa is out there." Jonathan turned to face him. "Let me tell you something about my sister. She's survived for over 2 centuries in a world that wants her dead. She's escaped the Covenant 7 times before. She's smart, strong, and more capable than you can imagine. The best thing you can do for her right now is stay alive. Because if you get caught or killed, it'll destroy her." David sat down on the small couch. His whole body ached. "How do you do it? Live for so long? Watch everyone around you grow old and die?" Jonathan's expression softened. "Honestly, most of us don't get close to humans for exactly that reason. We have our own communities, our own relationships. It's easier that way. But Lisa didn't do that." "No," Jonathan said quietly. "My sister always had a bigger heart than the rest of us. She wanted to experience real life, not just hide from it. I used to think it was foolish. Now I'm not so sure." He sat down across from David. "Can I ask you something? Why did you stay? When she told you what she was, why didn't you run?" David thought about it. "Because the truth doesn't change how I feel about her. She's still the same person who makes me laugh. Who remembers how I take my coffee? Who falls asleep during movies but always denies it later? The fact that she's lived a long time or has abilities I don't understand. That doesn't erase who she is to me." Jonathan studied him for a long moment. "You really love her." "I do." "Then you need to understand something," Jonathan said seriously. "If you're going to be part of her life, you can't be helpless. You need to learn how our world works, how to protect yourself, how to protect her." "I'm just a regular guy," David said. "I'm not strong or fast like you are." "No, but you have advantages we don't," Jonathan said. "You're human. You can go places we can't without drawing attention. You blend in naturally. And humans are unpredictable in ways we're not. The Covenant has been fighting beings like us for so long. They know how we think. But you? You're a wild card." David felt a small spark of hope. "So you'll teach me?" "I'll teach you what I can," Jonathan agreed. "But first, you need to understand what you're up against. Come with me." Jonathan led him deeper into the sanctuary, to a room that looked like a library. The walls were covered with books, newspapers, and documents. Some of them looked ancient. "This is our history," Jonathan explained. "Everything we know about the Covenant. Their methods, their leaders, their weaknesses." Over the next several hours, Jonathan taught David about the organization that had taken Lisa. The Covenant started in the 1600s, formed by people who believed supernatural beings were evil. At first, they just killed anyone they found who was different. But over time, they got more sophisticated. They realized they could learn from beings like the Nephilim, study them, use their abilities. "They have facilities all over the world," Jonathan explained. "Medical labs, where they experiment on captured beings, training centers for their hunters, and they're funded by some very powerful people who believe they're protecting humanity." "How do we fight something that big?" David asked, feeling overwhelmed. "We don't fight them head-on," Jonathan said. "We're outnumbered and outgunned. What we do is survive. We stay hidden. We move before they find us. And when we have to fight, we make it count." David absorbed all of this, his mind racing. "You said Lisa has escaped them before. How?" Jonathan pulled out an old file. Inside were photos and reports. 6 times, actually. Once in 1823, again in 1891, 3 times in the 1900s, and once in 1975, though that's the time she lost Thomas. David saw photos of Lisa from different decades, same face, different clothes and hairstyles. It was surreal. "She's a survivor," Jonathan said. "But she's also been alone for most of her life, moving from place to place, never staying long enough to build real connections. Until you." "What made me different?" David asked. Jonathan shrugged. "I don't know. Maybe she was tired of running. Maybe she saw something in you that made her want to try again. Or maybe she just got lonely enough to take the risk." They spent the rest of the day going through information. David learned about safe houses, emergency protocols, and ways to spot Covenant agents. His head was spinning with information, but he forced himself to remember all of it. That evening, Jonathan took him to meet some of the others in the sanctuary. A woman named Helen, who could sense emotions. An older man, called Robert, who had lived for 400 years. A young girl named Amy, who could make herself invisible for short periods. They all had stories. All had lost people they loved. All lived with the constant fear of discovery. But they also had community. They had each other. And David started to understand that Lisa's world wasn't just about running and hiding. It was also about finding family in unexpected places. Late that night, David couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Lisa, wondering where she was and if she was okay. He got up and found Jonathan sitting in the common area, looking at a computer screen. "Can't sleep either?" Jonathan asked. "No," David admitted. "Do you think she's alive?" "Yes," Jonathan said without hesitation. "If they'd killed her, we would have heard." The Covenant likes to make examples of beings they consider dangerous. The fact that there's been silence means they're holding her somewhere. "Can we find out where?" Jonathan turned the computer screen toward David. "I've been working on that. I have contacts, people on the outside who keep me informed. According to what I'm hearing, they took her to a facility about 60 miles north of the city. It's one of their research centers." David's stomach turned. "Research center? What does that mean?" "It means they're studying her," Jonathan said grimly, "taking samples, running tests, trying to understand what makes beings like us different from regular humans." "That's horrible." "Yes, but it also means she's valuable to them alive. They won't hurt her permanently. Not yet, anyway." David stood up, his fists clenched. "We have to get her out." "We will," Jonathan said. "But we need to be smart about it. The Covenant will be expecting a rescue attempt. They might even be counting on it, hoping to catch more of us. So what do we do?" Jonathan smiled slightly. "We give them what they expect, but not in the way they expect it. And that's where you come in. Because like I said, you're the wild card they won't see coming. Over the next week, Jonathan trained David in everything he could. How to move quietly. How to spot security cameras. How to read people and situations. David wasn't a natural fighter, but he learned to think strategically, to use his ordinariness as an advantage. He also got to know the sanctuary community better. These beings, who lived in hiding, weren't monsters. They were just people, trying to survive in a world that feared them. They had jobs, hobbies, relationships. They laughed and cried and worried about the same things everyone did. One afternoon, Helen sat with David and taught him meditation techniques. "Lisa will need you to be calm," she said. "Fear makes people make mistakes. If you're going to help rescue her, you need to learn to control your emotions." "How do you do it?" David asked. "How do you stay calm when you can sense everyone else's feelings?" Helen smiled sadly. "Practice. Lots and lots of practice. And knowing that fear is natural. It's what you do with it that matters." As the days passed, David felt himself changing. Not physically, but mentally. He was thinking differently, seeing the world through new eyes. And he realized that even if they rescued Lisa and everything went back to normal, he could never unknow what he'd learned. This hidden world would always be part of him now. On the 8th day, Jonathan came to find him. "We have a problem," he said. "Someone in the sanctuary has been watching you. Watching us. I think we might have a spy." David's blood ran cold. A spy? Working for the Covenant? Maybe. Or they could be working for someone else. There are other groups out there. Not everyone in our world gets along. That night, David lay awake again, his mind racing. They were planning to rescue Lisa, but if there was a spy among them, the Covenant would know they were coming. It would be a trap. And somewhere out there, Lisa was being held in a facility, probably wondering if anyone was coming for her at all. David made himself a promise right then. No matter what it took, no matter how dangerous it was, he was going to bring her home. Because that's what you did for the people you loved. You didn't give up. You didn't run away. You fought for them. Even when the odds seemed the spy problem hung over the sanctuary like a dark cloud. Jonathan called a meeting with the community leaders. But they couldn't figure out who it might be. Everyone had been vetted. Everyone had lived here for years. But someone was feeding information to the outside world. "We can't wait any longer," David said, on the 10th day. "Every day, Lisa is in that facility. Is another day. They're hurting her." Jonathan rubbed his tired eyes. "I know. But if we walk into a trap, we all die. And then Lisa definitely won't be rescued." They were sitting in Jonathan's apartment. Maps and blueprints spread across the table. The facility where Lisa was being held looked like a fortress. High walls. Security cameras everywhere. Guards patrolling constantly. "What if we use the spy to our advantage?" David suggested. Jonathan looked up. "What do you mean?" "We let them overhear our plan, but we give them the wrong plan. Make the Covenant prepare for something we're not actually going to do." A slow smile spread across Jonathan's face. "That's actually brilliant. Very human way of thinking." They spent the next 2 days creating a fake plan. They talked about it in public areas of the sanctuary where anyone could hear. They made it sound convincing. A full assault on the facility with 20 fighters, coming in from the north entrance at midnight. Meanwhile, they created the real plan. Just 3 people. Jonathan, David, and Helen. They'd go in from the south side during the day shift change when security was focused on the changing of guards. Helen would sense emotions to help them avoid detection. Jonathan would handle any fighting. And David would do what humans did best. Blend in and look like he belonged there. The night before the rescue, David couldn't eat. His stomach was in knots. Helen found him sitting alone in the sanctuary's small park area. "Nervous?" she asked, sitting beside him. "Terrified," David admitted. "Good," Helen said. "Fear keeps you sharp. It's overconfidence that gets you in trouble." "Can I ask you something?" David said. "Why are you helping us? You barely know me or Lisa." Helen was quiet for a moment. 50 years ago, I was captured by the Covenant. I was in one of their facilities for 6 months. The things they did." She trailed off, her eyes distant. "Someone I'd never met before risked everything to get me out. A Nephilim named Thomas." David's breath caught. "Lisa's Thomas?" Helen nodded. "He saved my life. Died doing it, actually. Not that night, but later because the Covenant never stopped hunting him after he broke me out. I owe him a debt I can never repay. Helping rescue his partner seems like a small thing in comparison." David felt tears in his eyes. "Lisa never told me he saved others." "She probably doesn't know," Helen said. "Thomas was like that. Helped people quietly. Never wanted recognition. He just believed in doing the right thing, even when it was dangerous." The next morning, they put their plan into action. David dressed in ordinary clothes and carried a fake ID that said he was a medical supply delivery person. Jonathan and Helen would follow separately, staying hidden until needed. The facility was in a rural area, disguised as a pharmaceutical research center. To anyone driving by, it looked normal. But David could see the subtle signs now. The cameras were military grade. The fence was reinforced. The guards tried to look casual, but moved with tactical precision. David pulled up to the delivery entrance with a van they'd borrowed. His heart was pounding so hard he thought the guard at the gate would hear it. "Delivery from Med Supply Corp," David said, handing over the fake papers. The guard checked his clipboard. "I don't have you on the schedule for today." David forced himself to stay calm. "Really? They told me it was urgent. Something about a rush order?" He pulled up a fake email on his phone that Jonathan had created. It looked completely legitimate. The guard frowned but waved him through. "Park in Bay 3. Someone will be out to check the delivery." David parked and waited, his hands sweating. This was the most dangerous part. If they actually checked the van thoroughly, they'd find it was mostly empty. But he was counting on them being busy and just signing off on the paperwork. A woman in a lab coat came out. She looked tired and annoyed. "What've you got?" "Syringes, tubing, some medication," David said, showing her the small amount of actual supplies they'd included. "Need a signature here." She barely glanced at the van, just signed the papers and waved him toward the building. "Take it to receiving. Second door on the left." David grabbed a box and walked into the facility. He was inside. Now he just needed to find Lisa. According to their information, prisoners were held in the basement level. David made his way through the building, pretending to be lost when people gave him odd looks. "Sorry, first time here," he'd say with an embarrassed smile. People usually just pointed him in a direction and moved on. He found a stairwell and headed down. 2 levels below ground, he started sensing he was in the right area. The walls changed from standard office paint to reinforced concrete. There were more cameras. More locked doors. David pulled out the device Jonathan had given him. It was supposed to loop camera footage for 30 seconds. He activated it and moved quickly to a door marked "Restricted Access." He was about to try the lock when he heard voices coming. David ducked into a supply closet, his heart racing. Through the crack in the door, he watched 2 guards walk past. "The Nephilim in Cell 7 is asking for water again," one said. "Let her ask," the other replied. "Director Morrison wants to see how long they can go without basic necessities. Part of the endurance testing." They passed by, and David felt rage building in his chest. They were torturing her, testing her like an animal. He had to find her fast. Cell 7 was down a long hallway. David could see it required a keycard to access. He didn't have one. This was where the plan got risky. He pulled out his phone and texted Jonathan. "Need you now. Basement level 2, East Corridor." Within 2 minutes, Jonathan appeared from another stairwell. He moved so quietly David barely heard him. "Where is she?" "Cell 7. Locked." Jonathan examined the door. "Stand back." What happened next happened so fast, David almost missed it. Jonathan's hand moved in a blur. There was a sound of metal breaking, and the lock was torn completely out of the door. Alarms immediately started blaring. "So much for subtle," Jonathan muttered. "Find Lisa. I'll handle whoever comes." David ran into the cell area. There were 6 cells visible, all with reinforced glass fronts so you could see inside. Most were empty. But in the 7th one, he saw her. Lisa was sitting on a metal bench, looking thin and tired. Her clothes were torn and dirty. But when she saw David, her eyes went wide with shock. "David, what are you doing here?" "Getting you out," he said, looking for a way to open the cell. There was a control panel, but it needed a code. "You need to leave," Lisa said urgently. "This is a trap. They knew someone would come for me. They've been waiting." As if on cue, doors at both ends of the hallway burst open. Armed guards poured in. David heard fighting from the direction Jonathan had gone, but he was alone here with at least 6 guards pointing weapons at him. "Step away from the cell," one of them ordered. David raised his hands but didn't move. His mind raced. He wasn't a fighter. He couldn't take these people on. But he also wasn't leaving without Lisa. Then Helen appeared from behind the guards. David had forgotten she could turn invisible. The guards didn't see her coming. She touched 2 of them, and they immediately dropped, overwhelmed by whatever emotion she'd pushed into them. The confusion gave Jonathan time to arrive, and he moved through the remaining guards like a force of nature. In less than a minute, all of them were down. "The code!" David shouted. "We need the code for the cell." "Stand back," Jonathan said. He punched the glass, and it shattered. Alarms were screaming now. They had maybe 2 minutes before reinforcements arrived. Lisa climbed out, weak but moving. She hugged David so tight, he couldn't breathe. "You came for me," she whispered. "Always," he said. "Touching reunion. But we need to move," Jonathan said. "Helen, can you sense how many are coming?" Helen's face was pale. "Too many. At least 30 people converging on this location." They ran back the way they'd come, but guards were already flooding the stairwell. They were trapped. "This way," Lisa said, leading them down another corridor. Even weak, she knew facility layouts. They found a service tunnel that led to a maintenance area. But as they emerged into what looked like a parking garage, they found themselves surrounded. At least 20 armed guards formed a circle around them, and standing in the middle was a woman in an expensive suit. "I'm Director Morrison," she said calmly. "And I've been very much looking forward to meeting you all." Jonathan moved protectively in front of the group. "Let us go, and nobody else gets hurt." Morrison laughed. "I don't think you understand your situation. This entire rescue attempt was anticipated. We've been tracking you since you left the sanctuary. Did you really think we didn't know about your little underground community?" David's blood went cold. They'd been set up from the beginning. "However," Morrison continued, "I'm willing to make a deal, one that might interest you, David." "How do you know my name?" David asked. "We know everything about you. Where you work, where your mother lives, your sister, and her 2 children." Morrison smiled. "We've been watching you since the night you ran from your apartment." Lisa grabbed David's arm, her eyes full of fear. "Here's my offer," Morrison said. "David, you come with us, voluntarily. Let us study you. You've been in close contact with a Nephilim for months. Your blood has been exposed to hers. You've breathed the same air, shared the same space. That makes you scientifically valuable. And if I refuse? David asked, though he already knew the answer. All. Life end. This crime. To the ranger. Then we take you anyway, along with everyone you love. Your family will disappear into facilities like this one. They'll become test subjects. Along with you and Lisa, and anyone else who tries to protect you. David looked at Lisa. At Jonathan. At Helen. These people had risked everything for him. For Lisa. And now, they were all going to be captured because of him. Unless he made a different choice. If I go with you, David said slowly, you let them go. All of them. The sanctuary too. You leave it alone. David, no. That's acceptable, Morrison said. You come quietly, submit to our research, and everyone else walks away. You have my word. Your word means nothing, Jonathan spat. But David was already making his decision. He could see it clearly now. This wasn't about being a hero. It was about making the choice that gave everyone else a chance to survive. And more importantly, it was about buying time. He stepped forward, away from the group. I'll do it. But I want it in writing. A guarantee that Lisa, Jonathan, Helen, and everyone in the sanctuary will be left alone. Morrison nodded to one of her people, who produced a tablet and quickly typed something. She showed it to David. It was a contract of sorts, promising exactly what he'd asked for. It was probably worthless. They'd probably break it the moment it was convenient. But it was something. David signed it. No. Lisa lunged for him, but Jonathan held her back. Let me go, she screamed. David, don't do this. David turned to look at her one last time. He tried to memorize her face, those eyes that had seen centuries, that had watched everyone she loved die, that were now filling with tears for him. I love you, he said, and this is how I fight for you. As Morrison's people led him away, David heard Lisa sobbing, heard her calling his name, but he didn't look back. Couldn't look back. Because if he did, he'd lose his nerve. He'd made his choice. Now he just had to hope it was the right one. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, being inside the enemy's facility might give him opportunities he wouldn't have had on the outside. After all, he'd learned from the best. Jonathan had taught him to think strategically, to use what advantages he had. And his biggest advantage was that the Covenant saw him as just a human. They had no idea what a determined human could do when they had nothing left to lose.